Hi, Math 2. So this is the Unit 6 review of Lessons 1 to 3, and I wanted to go over how to do some of these problems if you have questions. So the first question on the review, you can find a similar question on page 10, number 1. So that could give you something to look back at for some help. So first it says to reflect triangle ABC over the line x equals -6. So x equals -6 is a vertical line. Y equals our horizontal lines, and x equals our vertical lines. So at -6, I have this line right here where my y values are different, but my x value for all of these coordinates on this line is always x equals -6. So to reflect over it, I'm going to count. This is 1 space away, so this is 1 space away. This is 3 spaces away from the line, 1, 2, 3. On the other side is C prime, and then B prime would be on it. So if I join this together carefully in straight lines, this would be the reflection of ABC over the line x equals -6. It now asks me to translate it by the directed line segment from 0, 0 to 4, 1. So if you imagine what that movement would be like, I would be going to the right 4, up 1. To move from 0, 0 to 4, 1 would be right 4, up 1. So I want to take each of my coordinates and I want to move them right 4, up 1. So let's do it to B first. 1, 2, 3, 4, up 1 is my B double prime. C, 1, 2, 3, 4, up 1 is my C double prime. And A, 1, 2, 3, 4, up 1 is my A double prime. And so now I'll join those points. And I've just translated this along a directed line segment where my movement went from 0, 0 to 4, 1. You might remember we began talking about this as my xy coordinate goes to x plus 4 and y plus 1. So I took each of these coordinates and I added 4 to the x direction and I added 1 to the y direction. Now it asks for the coordinates of the final image. So my A prime, B prime, C prime, you need to go get me those coordinates. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so the next one also asks for coordinates. So you would go through here your A, B, C, and you would write in their coordinates. For example, A, the x coordinate would be -4, and the y coordinate is down 3 at -3. So this coordinate would be -4, -3. Okay, and we'll do that for all of these. And then it says write a sequence of transformations that takes A, B, C to D, E, F. So you'll notice on the solutions, on the answer key, it says that the answers will vary because there's lots of things you can do here. So one of the things you could do, I'll make this different than the one I put on the answer key, but I could move, for example, C to its corresponding vertice F. So one, I could translate along C to F. Once I do that, I then just have to rotate it clockwise or really counterclockwise. It could go either direction, but I rotate clockwise, and I could say this a couple ways. If you remember from the beginning of the year, I could say to rotate until, for example, A lines up with D. So rotate clockwise until A lines up with D using center F. And I believe that's also a 90-degree rotation. So for example, if I move C to F and then I rotate it so that A lines up with D, I believe that's a 90-degree clockwise rotation. So you're welcome to write it in that way as well. So then this example, number 3, is like the activity we did on page 7. So you'll notice the graph is the same, but the directions of what to do are different. So you're first asked to reflect this H over the y-axis. And so that means this is my y-axis, the vertical axis, and I do my reflections with counting. So I would reflect my vertices over. This is 4 to the y-axis. So 4 on the other side, 2 to the y-axis, 2 on the other side, and then 4. And it says to label this J. So this is my J. Then it says to translate by the directed line segment from -2, 0 to 3, -8. So first of all, -2, 0 is actually my corner. So if you remember when we did this in class, we actually can use that to help me with my direction. And I'm moving this coordinate, this corner at -2, 0. I'm moving it to 3, -8. So I'm going to move it right there. So you could think about literally if you had patty paper, sliding this whole figure down to here where this corner becomes this one. And so 2 up would be the other corner. And then going over up diagonally, over 2 up 1 would be this corner. And horizontally going over 2 would be this corner. And you would get this shape right here. So that's one way to think about arriving at K. Another way to think about this is your X movement to go from -2 to 3 is actually going right to the 5, right 5 units. You're going from -2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're taking your X coordinate over 5, and you're taking your Y coordinate from 0 down to -8. So you're going down 8. So for example, I'm moving this, let's do this coordinate right here. I'm moving over 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right, and now I'm going to go down 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's another way to use this to move all of your coordinates, that translation. And then finally reflect over the x-axis, and I'll let you guys do that. And you're going to reflect this guy over the x-axis. This is my horizontal x-axis, and I'm going to use counting to do that, for instance. And the answer will be in the locker. Great. So let's take a look at page 2. So this says it was the cool down for lesson 1. So first of all, I'm not sure why these items didn't translate from Word, but they didn't. That's just supposed to be A prime, B prime, C prime is the image of ABC. So it asked me to find the sequence of transformations that would take ABC to A prime, B prime, C prime. So this has a lot of answers. Your answers will vary. You'll see that in the locker. But I'm going to move either A to A prime, or maybe I'm going to move B to B prime, or I could choose to move C to C prime. Whatever you'd like to do is fine. So I'm going to move A to A prime. So translate A to A prime. But when I do that, I'm not sure if you can tell, but that if I moved this guy in this manner, I would not, I'm trying to match my movements. I would have a reflection right here. It's not a rotation like we saw in a problem earlier today. So you could do this a couple of ways, but the way I've started it, I'm going to say reflect my reflect triangle A prime, or reflect, actually not my, but my ABC that I moved, over the line X. This is a vertical line. Vertical lines have X equals -1. So that's one way to have done that if you chose to translate first. And we do that a lot. If you translated B to B, you'd be reflecting over X equals -2. If you translated C to C prime, you'd be reflecting over X equals -4. Another idea, you could have reflected over the y-axis, but be careful. If you reflect over the y-axis, then you'd actually be up here with your you'd be over a little bit, so you'd have to translate down. It's a little difficult to do without patty paper, but for example, I'll do it in a different color. You could reflect over the y-axis, it's over 3, so you're over here for this in-between state. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is your C prime, technically your B prime of my movement, and over 2. This is your A prime. So if you were looking at reflecting first, like your first movement was reflect over the y-axis, that's fine. But now you need to slide it. You need to slide it over 1 and down 2. And you could either write that in words, translate to the right 1 and down 2. You could use that setup where we say, for example, we could translate this way. So it would be x minus 1 because you're going to the right 1, and y minus 2 because you'd be coming down 2 to get that to line up. You could even say from 0, 0 to -1, -2, like they did in a problem before. There's many answers here. If you're not clear on yours, you're welcome to ask me about it in office hours. So let's take a look at lesson 2 review. This is similar to the problem on page 21, number 5. I'm not going to do it with you because it's also the same type of problem we just did. That's like page 10, number 1, and the first page of our worksheet, number 1. So why don't you give this one a try? Just note that this is y equals -1, and y equals -1 is a horizontal line at y equals -1. So it does change how the problem's done. It's not a vertical line, so be careful with that. So then this question is like page 16, number 1 in our book, where we've got different types of movement and we've got to say what it is. So first off, I don't know why I had some trouble formatting this, so I'm going to change these to numbers. I think it will make it a little easier so you're not matching letters with letters, because that could get very confusing, especially since they're all the same. So for example, let me do this first one. This is a translation. I know because I'm just taking 1 away from my x term, and I'm not changing my y value at all. So I look through my translation choices where it looks like I'm taking 1 away from my x coordinate, but I'm not changing my y coordinate at all. So it looks like A goes with number 2. And then for example here, it's 2 times the x coordinate, 2 times the y coordinate. If you remember, that's a dilation. Whenever I multiply by the exact same number, I'm changing the shape of my original. My image is going to be twice as big or half as big or a third as big or 3 times as big. It depends on what I'm multiplying by. So in this case, I'm doubling it. So I look for something about a dilation where my scale factor is 2. So it looks like B goes with number 3. So you can try to match up these translations with the same way I looked at number 1. The answers are in the locker. So then this particular one is like page 19, number 2. You're going to have to make a table for me. So this will be for A. This is, if you remember, we had a column for our original coordinates, and we had our column for our image. And in A, our image is going to be x minus 2 and y plus 1. And so I need 3 rows because I have A, B, and I have C. And A is 2, 3. B is what, 4, 2. And C is 3, 5. Hopefully my eyes are seeing those numbers correctly. So to do my translation, for the first one, I take 2 away from my x term, which would give me 0, and I add 1 to my y, which would give me 4. So my movement for A, I would be at 0, 4. This would be my A prime. And I would continue doing that for B and C, and I would connect them, and then that shape would be my answer to number 1, and I'd label it T. I'm going to do the same thing for B. So on B, I'll have my XY column, and I'll have my image column. And I can tell that my XY column's the same because it's the same A, B, and C. So 2, 3, my 4, 2, and my 3, 5. And so I'm going to make my X term negative. And so A prime would be -2, 3. So on this problem, I'd be going over to -2 and up to 3, and that's where my A prime would be for my second one. And so I would do the same for my other 2, and I would connect them, and the image I'd be looking at here will be labeled R. You can check your answer in the locker. So then on number 8, this one just wants me to describe whether it's a rigid motion, a dilation, or neither. This is like page 20, number 3. Rigid motion would be if I've got a translation, if I've got a rotation, or if I've got a reflection. And a dilation is when I multiply by the same number. And if you remember, a neither is when I multiply by 2 different numbers. And you can go back, off the top of my head, I'm not positive what page it is, but I'm thinking it must be page 17 or 18. We did one where I believe it was like 2x, 3y, and we saw that it was like stretched. It was distorted, the figure. And so that's how we knew it was neither. So I'm going to go ahead and write neither on B because it's got a 5 and a 3. That means my x values are getting 5 times bigger. My y values are only getting 3 times bigger. So my shape's going to be distorted. I already know if I'm only adding or subtracting a number from my xy coordinate, it's just sliding it around. So that's a translation. So I know that that is a rigid motion. Sorry about that. And same thing for this one. This is also going to be a translation. So I know that this is a rigid motion. My size will not change. It'll be exactly congruent. And lastly, 2x times 2y. We just did that one up above, I think on the previous page, on the previous page. And we saw that that was a dilation. It just got twice as big. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So the last one is the lesson 2 cool down. So you're going to need to do a table for this one, xy, negative xy. We did it up above, so you have an idea of how to do this one. You need your 3 columns, and then you'll graph your answer. This particular one will kind of be on top of itself, but you can check your answer in the locker just to make sure you did it okay. I hope this went well. If you have any questions on these, please come to office hours and ask me about it. I will talk with you guys later. Bye.